Welcome to Solo Pro Radio. It's the only resource for self-employed professionals to grow their business. I'm Barbara Saunders, the Solo Pro Success Coach, and it's my mission to help brilliant creative solo pros go from floundering to flourishing. And I do that as the director of the International Association of Self-Employed Communication Professionals and as the founder of the Solo Pro Academy, where I have programs focused specifically on helping solo pros build a profitable, custom-fit business. Swing on by soloprosuccess.com and pick up your free Income Accelerator Success Kit. If you'd like to join us, zip over to Solo Pro Radio on Facebook and like our page. You'll be able to ask questions, get to know our co-hosts, and find resources to help you connect and grow. Today my guest is Kathy Condon. She's an executive coach, speaker, and trainer on communication in the workplace. Her book, It Doesn't Hurt to Ask, It's All About Communication, was named Best Book Finalist by USA Book News. She has published her second book, Face-to-Face Networking, It's All About Communication, and it's receiving rave reviews on Amazon. Kathy graduated from the University of the Virgin Islands in St. Thomas and from Anthony Robbins Master University in Hawaii. She holds numerous certifications on communication subjects, and she lives right here in Vancouver, Washington, in the Northwest. Kathy's mission is to cultivate and share wisdom and enjoying soaring to new heights and increase the quality of the day. Today we're going to kind of talk about the difference between face-to-face networking and digital networking and how to kind of combine the two and really make the most of what you do. Welcome, Kathy.
Well, thank you very much, Barbara. My pleasure. Nice to be talking to you from across the river on our case.
I know. One of the great perks of technology. We don't have to get our feet wet.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm kind of excited about their topic today because I know that there are a lot of us who enjoy doing a virtual business, but we're missing that face-to-face kind of networking thing. And that's really your specialty, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I have always believed in face-to-face networking, Barbara, and actually started teaching in about 1984. Quit teaching it when everyone else decided networking was the right topic to be teaching, and I went into training intergenerational communications, which at the time I didn't realize what a great match they would be together. So then I was thinking about writing my book on face-to-face networking, and then social media came to the forefront, and I knew that wasn't the time to write it because everyone felt, okay, face-to-face networking is going to be needed because we can connect throughout the world, with technology. And as you so well put it, we're finding out that indeed all of a sudden people are now finding out that face-to-face networking is really the more productive of the two. People are constantly asking for examples. Tell me when social media worked and when it didn't. And you can see people are just trying to convince themselves that all the hours they spend behind the computer are just as effective as face-to-face networking.
Right, there's got to be a delicate balance there, doesn't it? Tell me, how did you develop a passion for networking? That's kind of unusual.
Well, you're right, it is unusual, but I think it was the result of moving around. I had a very stable life up until the age of 18 with a wonderful family in Wisconsin, and then I got my, actually started out as an executive secretary and ended up marrying the vice president of the junior colleges, which what happened, Barbara, then had us moving every 4 years, and anybody who's connected with the academic world and know for promotion-wise, when you're in the administrative level, you have to move. So each time, every 4 years, we would pick up and move to a totally different location and had to start all over again. And what I discovered is it was pretty easy for me to start meeting new people and things, and discovered that a lot of people thought that was really hard. So I moved here to Vancouver, Washington 24 years ago, called up the junior college and said, what has to happen for me to teach a class here and, in the evening and for adults? And they said, well, you need this and this and this, and by the way, we need it by noon tomorrow. And I hung up the phone and I thought, okay, if I did know what it is that I know well that I could teach, what would it be? And honestly, that's where it started. Went in and taught my first networking class. And as anyone who's trained in speaker, when you start doing that, the feedback from the audience is if you listen, you will hear what the questions are and what more you could add to your program. So that's basically how it got started.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's also a great little tip for all the solo pros building their business today. Not only you've got to get out and talk to people, but you've got to listen to them to help grow your own business, whatever that is. Thanks for sharing that really brilliant tip there.
Thank you.
Tell me what you've seen that has changed, and I use air quotes around networking because it's such a big word, but what has changed in this digital virtual world? What do you see that's so different?
Well, basically, I have to tell your listeners, Barbara, that I was an early user of the social media sites because I believed I had to know and understand, frankly, what was my competition. I mean, at that point, social media was my competition to face-to-face networking. Mm-hmm. However, there was the other piece that I also knew younger people weren't taught how to do face-to-face networking, and they wouldn't believe me unless I had a very visible presence on the three major sites which I use are Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And so I daily, and I'm going to repeat this, I daily go on to those sites and the status update or comments or whatever because I know I need to make a presence there. On the other hand, in my own community, I daily look for some kind of face-to-face networking event that I can get out and use, and go out and do my face-to-face networking. But I'd like to share with the listeners how and why you can combine the two so well is we have what's called Meetup, and I know they're throughout the nation, and there was a Meetup in Portland. And it was about going through an area of Portland that I had never visited before. And it was at 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Didn't cost it cost $5. I take that back. And we're all supposed to show up, and we're going to go on this tour of this area. So I signed up, and I showed up, and there were 20 people there. We went on this tour, and just fascinating tour, but there was 3 other people and I sort of gravitated together, and why we're not this year, we still laugh about it. But after the tour, we went out to lunch, and all 4 of us sat down together at this table, and we started talking about our lives. And the woman directly across from me, and this was how strange, but it would not happen without social media, turned out that she worked in a different store of the same company I worked in when we were in the Virgin Islands at the same time.
No.
And we're just going like, okay, this is obviously we need to talk about that more. And the 4 of us, we call ourselves the Gang of 4, get together once a month now. And that same person who was in the Virgin Islands, turns out I've never met anybody's birthday the same as mine, or birthday is the same as mine.
Oh, how strange.
The 4 of us have all different disciplines. One of them is really good at online stuff. One's a financial planner, and Meg is, moved up here from Los Angeles and is learning all about this particular area. Those 4 people become very, very important to me. And one of the guy who was a financial planner came over last night, and he said, look what happened because of social media. Within a very short time period, you asked me, he was delivering something that I needed for a project I'm working on. He said, you would have never thought to ask me if we hadn't met on social media. Mm-hmm. So that's just a marvelous way of showing how they can work together. It's like the social media is like, I used to say a resume is, opening the crack in the door to get you in. That's kind of what social media is to me at this particular point.
Interesting. And I picked up on a really, I think, important point, too, that I wanted to share with our listeners. When you talked about you were teaching face-to-face networking, but you got in and started to learn all these new tools as they came about so you could be visible. One of the big things about, getting out there is building your credibility and your reputation as a professional and as an expert, and so that you can bring that across in your face-to-face networking. And that's really where it comes across. I think one of the huge values of face-to-face is that people are able to trust you quicker. And I love that you said that you dug into these tools because you wanted to be able to talk to these people, intelligently about it. And that's that credibility piece.
Well, and Barbara, the listeners have to understand it's not easy. They've got to put the time and effort into it. It requires time, and you go like, okay, that didn't work. And I'll give you an example. So I was on, I'm on Twitter, and I was, I'm about 6,500 or whatever followers. But the fact that I went away for a week on vacation and chose not to update, on a regular basis, I just noticed I lost 14 followers. And I thought, 14. Isn't that fascinating?
It really is.
Yeah. So it's keeping that presence and sharing and, like on LinkedIn, one of the things I love being part of the group and answering questions and things. And the other thing I'd like to share with people who are using LinkedIn, when you get to that point about, it says, I'd like to have you join my professional link. There's nothing that irritates me more to get that. It's because that is a piece where you can make yourself stand out differently by saying, hi, I read a post that you put on so-and-so group. I would like to have, would like to link up with you or say something. And what I started doing, and I'm having so much fun doing, and I'm starting to build relationships by it, is people send me that LinkedIn, and I write back something like this. I'll say, hi, thank you for asking me to join you. Did I say something brilliant, or can I help you in any way? And like a little smiley face. And sign it, Kathy. And I get back these fascinating responses of why people got in touch with me, or I learned something new about them. So I am trying all kinds of different angles on social media to use face-to-face networking skills to kind of cement those relationships a little more.
That's an excellent tip. So you're infusing a little bit of your personality each time instead of just going the generic route.
Yeah, and every time I write, I just wrote an article, so, direct responses like what they do on Twitter and stuff, and I said, how not to make me feel significant. It was the title of it, and I posted it on my newspaper's blog, and people are just writing back, thank you so much for writing that, because I just hate direct things because they don't really care. They're pushing their businesses and stuff. People buy people who they know and like, and you've got to start building a relationship on social media just as much as you do. Even, you probably notice in Facebook, I frankly use that pretty much as my personal stuff. I have started a fan page called Kathy Condon Connects, which I'd love to have the listeners join just by pressing like. And I add kind of the more important articles that I think would be of interest to the wider view of people. But on the mainstream, I'm just writing like I wrote on this morning. I went swimming at 4:15 this morning. The heater wasn't on in the pool yet. One way to wake up, hurry. Just so people get to know more about you. And Barbara, we've got to have people understand, even if people don't comment on what you write on Facebook, if you're out and about in your community, they'll say things. I've been watching what you've been up to on Facebook. I heard you did blah, blah, blah. And they made no comment.
It is true. I've experienced that myself. I want to mention that page name again. It's Kathy Condon Connects on Facebook.
Right, exactly.
That is so true. I have to agree with you there. I have a lot of lurkers and stalkers on my Facebook, and you know, it's all friendly. It's a friendly game, and it is fun to say, oh, I saw your comment here, or that photo you posted was so cute. You know, they are listening. So great point and good tip. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned earlier that you kind of did some training early on about cross-generational communication. How does that come into play today with the virtual and the face-to-face?
Well, what's interesting, Barbara, I thought, you know, maybe I'm being old-fashioned on the whole idea of handwritten notes because I am a 100% believer in handwritten notes. And the reason being, I turned on my computer. I went to bed fairly early last night. I turned on my computer, and this morning 156 emails floated into my email when I opened it up. So I will admit I go through first to see if there's anything personal. So if somebody wrote me a note or, you know, it was great to see you, whatever, I would be reading that. However, I'd be reading it, and I would click it, and it would be gone.
It's gone.
So, again, I strongly were handwritten notes, but I thought maybe I'm too old-fashioned, so I better check this out with the younger generation to see what it is. So I posted it on LinkedIn, the question. And I said, this is a question for the younger generation. You know, and I gave an age, and I said, do you like handwritten notes? And Barbara, what was sad is they didn't know what to do with it because they never get handwritten notes.
Oh,
they literally said, I don't get any, and I don't know. So I'm downtown Vancouver in our favorite coffee shop called the Java House with one of the premier executives in our community, and he believed as well that he built his career on writing handwritten notes throughout his lifetime. And I posed a question to him, and I said, do you think that the younger people really appreciate these notes? And about this time, a young man about 25 years old came up to the table, and Tom said, well, why don't you ask him? So I did, and he said, I'm going to go get my friend over here because he got a handwritten note about 3 weeks ago, and he's still talking about it. So the young man comes over to tell me how thrilled he was to get a handwritten note. So the whole idea that the younger people don't like it or don't react to it, I think is poppycock. I mean, imagine coming home or into your office and you have something that is specifically for you, that someone took the time to congratulate you or say thank you.
Well, you know, that's such a brilliant, I'm kind of going back in my history here as you're talking, and it's so true because I still have those little cards that somebody took the time to write something on it. You know, I have a whole shelf that I put little thank you cards on. And you're very right. Those are the things that stick with us, and we keep those memories of that person that wrote it. So what a great point.
And let me share with you what I just got in the mail yesterday. Now, this is from a colleague, a friend that I know well, and it says on the front, talking between friends is always good for the soul. And in the inside, her handwritten note said, just a little note to say, I'm so thankful for our friendship. Sincerely, Brandy. Do you have any idea how cool that was, opening that up in my mail yesterday?
Wow.
You know, I think the world and all of this woman, but that handwritten, because I opened up and go, oh, handwritten note, who's this from? Mm-hmm. And look, here I am talking about it to you and talking to the world out there and all the listeners. That's how effective they are.
And what a great thing to, 5 years from now or whatever, when you're a little depressed, to look at that one little thing can lift you up, and it's free.
Well, and let me give you another little hint, Barbara, that I did not include in my book because I didn't think of it until I had all my note cards all piled up, and I heard that St. Jude needed fronts of cards, for children to make new cards and things. So one weekend I decided to go through all my notes and, pull the covers off of these note cards, and of course I'm reading them and I'm going, oh wow, yeah, I blah blah blah. But what I realized was missing was the date.
Oh.
And so when, I wish I knew when. So that's a new tip that I did not put in my book, which to me is big.
That is, because you learn a little context.
Yeah.
really
And you see, and this is what I'm really working to get across, from the book Face-to-Face Networking, it's all about communications, is I wrote every little thing like that in it to have people understand that it is not big stuff, it is little stuff. Just like what we're talking on social media, it's not the big stuff you do, it's the little stuff that you do that make yourself stand out. And, it's interesting because I never thought of saying it that way, but that's really it. It's just every day doing a little bit on social media.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love also the story that you told about when you were in the coffee shop and you had this sort of impromptu survey going on. There's a kernel of brilliance there as well. Not only is it communicating, but you're out there in the public and you used that moment to create a survey. You were building your business, but you're also building some relationships as well.
Absolutely.
You took advantage of the moment. I think that's really, you're talking about these little things.
Well, and then what was interesting, one of the young men was looking for a job, and I said, okay, so do you have a contact card? And he didn't have one. And that's the other thing that I really have to have people understand, that when you're looking for a position, particularly, well, and if you're a small business, no matter who you are, you need to have a contact card with you at all times. And I'm going to repeat that, at all times. Because when you step out the door of your home, you are networking. Everybody you come into is a possible relationship. And somehow people got it all figured out that you got to go to these big events and figure out which networking event to go to, when if they realize that in the grocery store line, which I just did, I ran into a woman who said, Kathy Condon, and I'm standing there and I'm going like, okay, and she explained to me that 6 years ago I taught a class for the city of Vancouver, and she was in that class. And hadn't seen her in 6 years, and now she's, working in a major position someplace else, and we got in contact again, and it's never too late to get in touch again.
Well, definitely, and obviously your class made an impact on her that she wanted to remember it.
Exactly. Yes. Well, I would hope that's my belief, Barbara.
Tying those connections, yeah. So what tools, you've mentioned, contact card. What other tools do you need for, doing face-to-face networking?
Well, the other thing you need is a fabulous handshake. And Barbara, if anyone ever told me that I was going to be teaching handshakes, I would say that they're the craziest human beings in the world. However, what happened is I was going to be speaking at a chamber event, and I knew one of the executives had a horrible handshake. It was worse than worse. So, and I don't know what possessed me, but I decided that I was going to put handshake into the presentation on face-to-face networking. And because he was there, he would hear it and would be able to, hopefully correct his handshake. Well, I get there, and once you know it, it's the one event that he didn't go to.
Yeah.
So I am standing there doing my presentation. I'm thinking, okay, should I do the handshake? And I decided that I would. And so I went forward with it. And this is, again, the simple way to explain it is that when you do a handshake, what you want to do is get the two V's of the two hands to meet. So keep pushing your hand up so that the V's meet. Then you press your hand and, pump up and down a couple of times. The wimpy handshakes come when people grab, the bottom of your fingers, or they squeeze the bottom of your fingers and your rings hurt and everything else. And so to have a strong handshake, you get the V's to meet.
So that's the base of your thumb?
Yes, exactly. Between your thumb and your index finger. So all the way up into it. And men and women equally have wimpy handshakes. I don't care what anybody can try to convince me that women have more wimpy handshakes. Women will say, "Are you kidding?" Men do, and so on. So it is a problem that we have out there, that people, if they did not learn how to shake hands at home by their parents, Barbara, nobody ever tells them.
No, it's kind of a dying art, isn't it?
It's a dying art. So I'm on the way to Fort Lewis to go do a training for the sergeant majors, meaning they're the heads of all the platoons at Fort Lewis. And I'm driving up there, and I'm thinking, should I do handshakes? Because obviously, and I thought, no, Kathy, you've made a decision. Every single training you do, no matter what topic it is, I teach handshakes because it's a way to get everybody up and get the energy moving and so on. So I decided to put the handshakes in there, and I made the presentation, and as the guys were shaking hands with various people, one of them came up to me and said, Kathy, you've forgotten who your audience is. And I said, no, I haven't. I said, just kind of bear with me. So they, the energy got up, and they all sat down. And I said, you all are going to be leaving the military, and you are going out into the world. And I said, I would like to give you a responsibility of helping people. And they're kind of like looking at me like, what is she up to? And I explained that how handshakes were so wimpy out there, and that particularly what I'm discovering, when a man from another culture teaches another man from another culture how to shake hands, and we're talking the United States here. I fully accept the fact that there's all kinds of different forms of meeting throughout the world. But in the United States, that people from other cultures so appreciated being educated on how to shake hands. And they all just looked at each other and thought, well, we can do this. And of course they can do it. And what a better resource to teach shaking hands than them. But it is rampant how bad handshakes are.
Yeah, and I love that point that you made about different cultures, because we are such a global community now. Not only online, but right in our own community. We've got Russians and Asians and, the Hispanics all together, and they're very, very different communities. And I remember living in Europe, not knowing, I'm very uncomfortable with someone walking up and kissing me on the cheek. It's in my personal space. But we need to learn how to, exist within the culture that we live. And that's, I don't think that we would have even thought of that in connection with networking, but great point there.
Well, and it turns out that this whole subject, and I actually got in an argument with a man on LinkedIn. I had made an update status. I said, I said, a great handshake is getting the V's to meet, and women like firm handshakes too. That's all I wrote as an update. And so this salesperson started writing back and forth to me. He said, you are absolutely dead wrong. With a woman, you have to do, match the pressure of the hand and so on. And you know what, Barbara? Finally, I gave up. Unfortunately, he's teaching salespeople this. And imagine the poor salesperson has to go in and learn how to shake hands and supposedly pay attention to the pressure that is being on his hand when it's real easy if you just have the V's mean stuff. But he would not give in on the fact that women want firm handshakes, and we do want firm handshakes. In fact, I put the handshakes at the beginning of the book and didn't realize how smart I was, because the men read that and it gets them interested, and more than one has said, I had no idea that we were having trouble giving women handshakes. So it's a big topic, and it's a topic that keeps coming up again and again. And if I use it for an energy raiser in my trainings, what's interesting is that I have to predict the fact that I could get into a 10 or 15-minute conversation on handshakes, because, Barbara, where do people talk about it?
Exactly. That's really brilliant. I cover a lot of mindset issues for women who are dealing with, coming out and being the strong woman that they are, because they've been so conditioned to be, the nice little girl, the receding sort of person, the weaker person as children. And it occurs to me that this strong handshake is a great place to start for a woman to really express her power in her own self.
Well, not only that, this is the other thing that I learned in the classes, Barbara, is that the men told me, and now it's just like, duh, I did know that the men were taught to wait to see whether or not we women are going to shake hands. And they say there's always that hesitation of should they shake hands with us. So I'm teaching professional women to always, and hear the key word always, to get your hand out there right away so that there isn't that doubt or wondering, because your job is to make the person standing in front of you comfortable. And by getting your hand out there right away, they don't even have to question, whether or not. But
yeah, those poor men are so confused, aren't they?
well, on that particular one, and I don't blame them, because it's just, and women are confused about whether or not they should, how firm they should do it. But we've just got to make sure we have the women get their hands out. And then the other thing is that when you're seated and having lunch, let's say, right. I have no idea why it's only the man that stands up to shake hands and not the woman. And I have been, when I'm having lunch with, if somebody's coming up to introduce me at the table or whatever, I stand up and shake hands with that person. And it was interesting because I ran into a woman 6 weeks later, and she told me, she said, I was just so impressed that you got up and shook hands with me. So,
it's taking control of the situation in a way, too.
Yeah.
I like that.
And it's just, why do we just sit there and smile?
Demurely, yes.
So anyway, you can tell us this one, between contact cards and shaking hands, these are like, and handwritten notes, these are my three major things that I just think are so simple but so underutilized. What
are some other tools that you suggest people have on hand for face-to-face networking?
Well, one of the tools, and again, it may make me sound old-fashioned, but I don't care because I know it works, is I absolutely do read my local paper.
Really?
I read the papers out, the little flyers and little papers are out in the neighborhood, and I do it for two reasons. One, and it's interesting because I've been trying to get from our paper, what is the amount of people who buy ads for the online edition versus the online, the regular hard copy paper. And so they're working on finding out that number, because I know they're not equal. I know there's a lot more ads in the printed than there is online yet. Thus, those ads are a resource, incredible resource to help you figure out where it is you want to go networking. And Barbara, I will give you the key way to pick out a networking event. And these are my two questions that I ask myself. Will I learn something or will I have fun? If I cannot answer yes to either one of those, I do not go to that event.
So the second one was, will you have fun?
If I'm going to learn, what can I learn? Am I going to learn something, or will I have fun?
Okay, I like that.
And how simple is that? It takes away, I've got to go, because you and I both know, particularly in the community, in the area where we live, we couldn't possibly go to every networking event that exists anyway.
Absolutely, yeah.
And why not go someplace where you're going to learn something or have fun? And you see, that should have your listeners understand why I think networking is fun. I mean, I just think it is so interesting. Who are the new people I'm going to meet? Or play and fundraisers and all of that. Those are all networking events. You don't have to go to an event that's labeled networking event. And don't even get me started on speed networking. I have no idea how that can be effective. No idea.
Great point.
So, because I believe when I go to these events, or I learn something or have fun, and there's an hour beforehand, let's say it's an hour before dinner, and again, I just suggest people go. Don't go when you think breakfast is going to be served. Go early. One of my biggest pet peeves was I walked in one morning to a public relations breakfast, and everyone had gone to their plate and sat down at their table and were eating, and all they were doing was sitting there talking to all their own colleagues.
Mm.
Well, you're going to go back to the office. You're going to sit there and talk about all the stuff that's going wrong in the office, and so on. You're not meeting people that way. And so for an hour before an event, I go the minute it's supposed to open. And during that hour, my goal is to meet 3 people only. And I will repeat that, 3 people only, because that gives me the opportunity to get to know something about that individual.
Well, I want to ask you some questions about working a crowd, but first let me remind our listeners that you're listening to Solo Pro Radio here on the Women for Women Network, and my guest today is Kathy Condon. She's a speaker and trainer in communications and networking. And I want to jump back into the conversation by kind of asking you a little bit, about working the crowd. First of all, a lot of us, suffer from a little bit of social anxiety. There's some introverted people. How do you suggest they get themselves kind of psyched up to get to the event?
Well, first of all, make sure you have a name tag, and I would like to suggest that you get your own name tag made. Okay. Because, all of this experience, those name tags, kind of flipping off, or if they're made in advance, you can't possibly read the name on it anyway. And if you want to save yourself a lot of time and energy and make it easier on the person you meet, is get a name tag made. And mine happens to be an oval navy with white letters and my name on it, and a magnet so that it works on any clothing I have. Because I don't have to stand in line to get a name tag, and I can get out there and do that. So that's one of the things I would really suggest. And you can usually get those at trophy shops. They have really cool magnets. So and get a magnet below that for women. It doesn't ruin your clothes, but it goes through the lapels of your blazer. So then what you do is you got your name tag on, you put it on the right side, because when you do that, when the person shakes hands with you, their eye automatically goes to your name tag. And again, politicians and fundraisers knew that long ago, and now other people are starting to catch on to that. So again, make it easy for people. So you got your name tag on now, and you walk into the room, and this is the easiest way to do it. Is I'm good at seeing patterns, and what I noticed was that when I walked into the room, there was nothing ever to the right of the door that I walked into. There wasn't the coat rack, there wasn't the food, there's no people. Occasionally there's a plant, and occasionally there's a garbage can. So if you walk into a room full of strangers, what you do is you walk to the right of the door, stand there, and your brain is going, I hate these events, maybe I'll get some food, I wonder if I know anybody, and blah, blah, blah. We all do that. There's not a single person that hasn't had that feeling when you walk into a whole room full of strangers.
Right.
But what you want to do is you want to stand there, breathe, get yourself together, and no one notices you there. You're just there looking around, and you're looking for the person standing all alone. People can make themselves really miserable if they want to go up to 2 people that are facing each other and talking. It is very hard to break into a conversation like that. And one of the things about that is that the best way to remember that, if you hadn't seen your high school classmate in 20 years and you only had 5 minutes to be together, would you want another person coming up to them?
Breaking into that conversation, yeah.
Yeah, and so when people are facing face-to-face, they often are doing business or they are engaged in rapport. And so you want to go up to the person all alone. You go up to them, extend your hand, and in my case, I would say, like, to shake my hand and shake hands. Hi, I'm Kathy Condon. So tell me, what great thing happened to you recently? Barbara, that is without a shadow of a doubt the best opening question I have had found yet.
Really?
Yeah, because what people, they're not used to that, and the next thing they'll go like, oh, well, I just got back from vacation. Oh, where did you go on vacation? I can imagine me, since I just came back with my daughter, my family in South Carolina. I just came back from South Carolina 2 days ago. And really, what were you doing there? Well, my daughter's from Belgium. And you can see how, if this is the key, if you listen to the answer, you can immediately have another question to ask.
So you don't just dive into what do you do. You
don't have. My advice is, on this first meeting, you don't even talk about what you do. Learn about the individual, because the technology world has gotten us all so we are craving to feel significant or important, and it is 100% okay to ask what great thing happened to you recently and to listen to the answer and keep asking questions. And it just continues to take the conversation in a very, very fascinating way, because you're building relationships and you're learning. You don't talk about business on this first meeting. After the meeting's over, you write them a handwritten note. If we have time, we can talk about that. You include your contact card, and then you have coffee with them, and then you talk about your business. But there is nothing more irritating to me personally if someone just did the other day. They came up to me and said, "Hi, so, do you have your financial plan in place?" And I'm going, you know what? I don't have a clue who you are. I mean, I was just tipped.
Right.
And it does not work to sell your business within 5 minutes of meeting someone. Because think about it. Who do you hire, Barbara, for things that you do? And why did you call me? Because you and I sat down face to face.
That's true. That's true.
It's face to face takes it to the next level. So I'm going to South Carolina. So I wanted to make a long story short, there was a woman that I was to meet in Charlotte, North Carolina, because I was flying out of there. Met her on LinkedIn. We talked for an hour on the phone. We had so much in common. Just because of various circumstances that we didn't end up meeting face-to-face, but we talked again on the phone, and we agreed within 2 weeks we're going to get on the phone again. You see, it's over and over again, it's that extra piece that we've got to add to social media to make this work.
Well, that's a great tip of coordinating your social media. You knew you were going to South Carolina and you had this connection with this person. So, you were deepening that relationship. That's a great tip as well. A lot of us, we don't think about that.
And I was in going to Charlotte, South Carolina, and I put in Charlotte, South Carolina, and the event planner came up. And I thought, okay. So I picked up the phone and talked to her because I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I could figure out an event and have a book signing while I'm there?
And write it off.
And so what happened is we started talking, and she said, Kathy, April in Charlotte, North Carolina, in Charleston, North Carolina, is wedding month. No events are held because everything is wedding. But yet, then the next thing you know, she's telling me where to be sure to eat.
Oh, okay. That's good enough.
You see, so that was how I combine social media and networking and things. I do it all the time, but I still think if I were going to travel any place, well, let's face it, there's Twitter meetups from every city. You can get connected with those and meet people who are on Twitter. Those are great fun to go to. So it's a combination of the two, but when you want to go, for lack of a better word, to go to the kill, to really get to know someone, it's face-to-face.
That's an excellent tip. I'm intrigued by, you had mentioned a great way to start a conversation is, what is the great thing that's happened to you recently? What are a couple other little tips to start conversations for the
I would be happy to share with that, Barbara, and one of them is jewelry. Believe it or not, I knew women always had stories about our jewelry. If you have any jewelry on right now, I bet you have a story about it. And it is bizarre, but we have stories about it. So I would go out there, and I was teaching one of the ways to start conversations is talk about women's jewelry. Like in this particular case, this one person had this really ugly pin on. And it was really ugly. But so, again, when you go out networking, be genuine. And I said, well, that's a really unusual pin. That's all I said. The next 15 minutes went on. I learned all about the latest trip that she had been in and how she found it and what was involved and blah, blah, blah. And so what happened, the guys got after me and said, well, wait a minute, we have stories about our jewelry. So once again, I go up to the military, right? I go up and do the training, and one of the soldiers said, Kathy, we don't all have stories. And I go up to him, and he's got 2 rings on that look like wedding rings on both hands. And I said, so are you married to 2 separate people? And he goes, well, this is from my wife, and this one's from the military. And he goes, oh my gosh, I have a story.
There's a story.
And all the rest of them just started laughing. And the story was that he put the ring on when he joined the military 25 years ago on his left hand, and when he's retiring, he's taking it off. Wow. And so there's stories, and again, it's not business, but you're finding out the essence of that individual, and that's what you want to do, is you want to find the essence of the individual.
You know, I think that, go ahead. Well, I was going to say, the thing that I'm distilling is that what you're doing is putting the focus, a lot of people, what I hear a lot of people don't like networking is because it makes them uncomfortable, because they feel, awkward. And it sounds like what you're saying is put the focus on the other person so you don't
100%.
think about you.
It's 100%. That's what it is, Barbara. It's not what you want to get the other person talking. Again, I'll say it. You know everything you know. What you want to do is you want to learn something else. And if you go in the attitude about what can I learn or how can I have fun here, it's totally a different viewpoint. And that's why, I'm working on applying for a project, and the person who came to see me last night said, I can't think of a better project for you because you're going to be out networking all the time doing what you love to do. And I said, well, it's just so interesting. And that's what the difference is. And again, another question, another comment to make regarding men, executive men, and notice I'm saying executive men. If you go into like a big boardroom setting or whatever, right, the men will have out their really nice pens, and they have stories behind those pens all the time. And you ask them, what a great pen, and then they'll launch into their long story about how they got that pen originally.
Funny.
And so women need to take, when you go to like a board level meeting or something like that, you need to make sure you don't have the hotel pen in your hand. The men notice the pens just immediately. They're very visual, and they'll notice it.
Great point. A nice fancy.
I bring out my white rhododendron every time pen that I have, every time I go to a big executive meeting, because they're looking.
Those are some excellent tips. I want to make sure that people know how to get in touch with you. There's your website, kathycondon.info, not .com, but .info. There's the Kathy Condon Connects Facebook page, and you also have a new recording project coming up. Is that right?
I do, and I just worked on it this morning. We're recording back and forth, very much like you and I have just done here, the whole book, face-to-face networking. And then, Barbara, I'd also like to say that the easiest way, if they'd like to buy the book, is to go to Amazon, and they'll find it either under Kathy Condon or face-to-face networking, and it's also there as an e-book as well.
Oh, excellent.
So,
and that's the face-to-face networking. It's all about communication book.
Correct. Absolutely. And by all means, do email me with your questions. I would be happy to answer.
And they can connect with you on LinkedIn if they'd like to get to know you a little more.
That would be even more fun, especially if they wrote, I'd like to connect with you because I heard you on Barbara's radio program. Love it.
I didn't note in that connection email.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Tips. Thank you so much for being with me today, Kathy. This has been just a brilliant conversation. I want to remind our listeners, next week, copywriter for coaches, Beth Bergman, will be here. So we'll be chatting about how to get your message out in more communication in a different form. So thanks again, Kathy. This has been wonderful.
My pleasure, Barbara.